is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Amid the rising conflict in the South China Sea, the Philippine Coast Guard clarified that the civilian voyage to Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough shoal, using small boats was not sanctioned by the government. Meanwhile, China has warned the Philippines not to abuse China's goodwill regarding the maritime issue in the contested waters. The death of a young activist who underwent months of hunger strike renewed calls for reforms in Thailand's judiciary process and centuries-old monarchy. Also in the headlines, cases of lonely deaths in Japan have increased, with a large percentage of the population having in mind that they die alone. Japan is also known as one of the countries with a high suicide rate. And in July, delegates from the United Arab Emirates and the Philippines will convene for the second round of discussions aimed at fostering free trade between the two nations. I am FRANCO Baranda. Newsline World starts now. The Philippine Coast Guard clarified that the civilian voyage to Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough shoal, using small boats was not sanctioned by the government despite rising tensions in the disputed territories. Almar Forsuelo has the report.
On April 30, 2024, the BRP Bagakay, a 44-meter multi-role response vessel of the Philippine Coast Guard or PCG, was damaged after being hit by water cannon from the China Coast Guard during its last mission to Bajo de Masinloc. Despite the vessel's sturdiness, it could not withstand the intense water pressure unleashed by China, resulting in damages amounting to 2 million pesos. However, despite the escalating tensions in the disputed territories, the Atin Ito coalition was undeterred. This is a group of civilians who went to Bajo de Masinloc using small boats. On Wednesday morning, around 100 boats departed from Zambales for a civilian mission to Scarborough in West Philippine Sea. The group's aim was to mark the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone or EEZ to assert our rights. Following this, the PCG clarified that this action was not sanctioned by the Philippines. In a press briefing on Wednesday, Commodore J. Tariela, PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, stated that the civilians were not forced to go to the area. He said that China's claim that this mission was supported by the government is fake news. He also clarified that the group undertook this initiative on their own, despite the intense situation.
Mariin kong sinasabi ngayon na itong desisyon ng atin ito na maglayag sa Bajo de Masinloc ay voluntary. No? This is their own initiative. Hindi tayo sumuporta dito, hindi tayo nag-udyok nito, hindi natin sila pinilit. Let me emphasize na ang atin ito convoy na to going to Bajo de Masinloc ay hindi sanctioned ng national government. No? Kasi may lumabas na fake news na naman ang People's Republic of China na this is sanctioned by the national government.
To ensure the safety of the civilians going to Scarborough shoal, the PCG also deployed ships and aircraft for monitoring.
The main reason kung bakit the Coast Guard Commandant has decided to deploy aircraft, second, to add additional Coast Guard vessels na i-deploy natin dito sa Bajo de Masinloc is para siguraduhin ang kaligtasan ng ating mga sibilyan na sumama dito sa sail na to.
Regarding the question of whether the PCG is prepared in case something happens to the civilians, this was Tariela's response.
If you're going to ask me, prepared ba tayo for any incidents kung sakali may mangyari, no? Well, it's very difficult to tell kung ano talagang insidente ba ang ina-expect natin dito. But, even with the very limited number of Coast Guard vessels we have, what I can tell you right now is that the Philippine Coast Guard will really make sure and do whatever it takes, no, para siguraduhin na maililigtas ang ating mga kababayang Pilipino.
Among those who sailed to Scarborough Shoal aboard small boats with the new Masinloc Fishermen's Associations, Subic Commercial Fishing Association Incorporated, Mabayo Agri-Aqua Association in Bataan, Pambansang Katipunan ng Samahan sa Kanayunan, Pambansang Kilusan ng mga samahang magsasaka, Center for Agrarian Reform, Empowerment and Transformation or CARET, Student Council Alliance of the Philippines or SCAP, and Akbayan Youth. For God and my beloved Philippines, Almar Forzuelo, SMNI News.
China on Wednesday warned the Philippines not to abuse China's goodwill regarding the South China Sea. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said in a press briefing that the Philippines had sent 5 commercial fishing boats with 200 people on board to the water of Huangyan Dao, also known as Scarborough Shoal, on the same day to proclaim their rights over the adjacent waters.
中方2016年就菲律宾少量小型渔船在黄岩岛附近海域正常捕鱼活动作出善意的安排，同时依法对非渔民相关活动进行管理和监督。
That's why the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman said that if Manila were to abuse this, Beijing would retaliate.
如果菲方滥用中方的善意，中方将依法维权反制。 相关责任和后果完全由菲方承担。
Filipino civilians sailed toward a China-controlled reef on Wednesday to distribute provisions to Filipino fishermen and assert their right in the disputed waters. The mission follows a recent incident where China Coast Guard vessels fired water cannons at 2 Philippine government boats in the same area, highlighting the ongoing maritime tensions between the two countries. Almost 8 years after the Philippines secured a landmark victory in its arbitration case against China, Beijing still largely dismisses the international ruling, claiming it has no legal basis and asserting historical rights. The NEDA board approved a more than 30 billion pesos infrastructure for Safer and Resilient Schools project for the reconstruction of schools outside Metro Manila. Creseline Catarong with the report.
On Wednesday, the 16th National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA board meeting was held at Malacanang, where various projects in infrastructure, agriculture, and transportation were approved. Among those approved by the NEDA board was the Infrastructure for Safer and Resilient Schools project worth over 30 billion pesos. This aims to rehabilitate and reconstruct school facilities outside Metro Manila that have been damaged by calamities. The project, which will be financed by an official development assistance loan from the World Bank International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, will be implemented by the Department of Education and the Department of Public Works and Highways. Of the more than 30 billion pesos total project cost, 27.5 billion pesos will come from loan proceeds, while 3 billion pesos will be counterpart funds from the national government. The Infrastructure for Safer and Resilient Schools project will be implemented from 2025 to 2029. The project includes the repair, rehabilitation, retrofitting, and reconstruction of school facilities outside the National Capital Region, which were damaged by various disasters between 2019 and 2023. It is expected to benefit more than 1,200 schools, more than 4,700 school buildings, 13,000 classrooms, and more than 700,000 students. Project components include relatively simple works for school infrastructure recovery and operations and maintenance with a 9.6 billion pesos allocation, and relatively complex works for school infrastructure recovery with 19.8 billion pesos budget. Another component will be project management, monitoring, and evaluation with a 1.1 billion pesos budget allocation. The project aims to build resilient classrooms, especially during calamities, to ensure the continuity of the function of the education system and minimize disruptions in learning. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Creseline Catarong, SMNI News.
When we come back, In July, delegates from the United Arab Emirates and the Philippines are set to convene for the second round of discussions, which will be centered on fostering and enhancing free trade relations between the two nations. And the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul has resulted in the overflow of the Uruguay River, leading to the displacement of thousands of people. Newsline World will be back after the break. The death of a young activist who underwent months of hunger strike renewed calls for reforms in Thailand's judiciary process and centuries-old monarchy. Chatmongkong Pisamay Goson files this report.
The Thai government launched an investigation over the death of a young political activist who went on a partial hunger strike while being detained on 7 court cases, which include insulting the country's monarchy. Netiporn Bungsane Sangkom was only 28 years old when she died at a hospital in Bangkok on Tuesday. Netiporn died from cardiac arrest after 65 days of partial hunger strike. She refused to take minerals and vitamins given by the hospital despite her deteriorating health. Her death sparked calls for reforms in the country's judicial process, such as allowing activists for their right to be temporarily released on bail. She was a member of the activist group Thaluwang, which translates as Shattering the Palace. The group is known for their bold and aggressive campaigns demanding reforms in the country's centuries-old monarchy, as well as Thailand's lèse majesté law, which is one of the strictest in the world. Under Section 112 of the Thai Criminal Code, it is illegal to defame, insult, or threaten the monarch of Thailand. The law covers the king, the queen, the heir apparent, or the regent, and is punishable with a jail term between 3 and 15 years. Foreign ambassadors in Thailand expressed their condolences to the families and friends of the Thai activists. Reporting from Thailand, I'm Chatmongkong Pisamay Goson, your Global Citizens correspondent for SM9 News Channel.
Representatives from the United Arab Emirates and the Philippines will meet for a second round of free trade talks in July. Gratero Mori with a report.
Emirati and Filipino government negotiators hailed the positive progress of the first round of economic talks between the Philippines and the UAE this past weekend. Trade Undersecretary Alan Hepty led a group of negotiators from the Philippines in holding the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with their Emirati counterparts in Dubai on Saturday. The next round of free trade talks will be held in Manila in July. The Philippines aims to enhance its market access when it comes to exporting halal-related products, as well as exports of tropical fruits and garments, luxury watches, belts, and other leather products. This is the first time the Philippines entered a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement in the Philippines. The UAE is the Philippines' 17th largest trading partner and its top export market in the Gulf region, with two-way trade to have reached $1.9 billion in 2023. The UAE and the Philippines aim to complete negotiations on the free trade agreement before the end of 2024, in time for the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Reporting from Dubai, I'm Gratero Omori, your Global Citizen correspondent for SM9 News Channel.
As many as 68,000 Japanese nationals are expected to die alone by the end of 2024 as the so-called solitary deaths in Japan are becoming more common, issue besides the country's rapidly aging population. Let's see more details with Natsumi Kojima.
Rising cases of Kodokushi or lonely deaths in Japan is fast becoming a thriving industry as cleanup crews devote their time cleaning up after Japanese people who die alone. Most of them are the elderly who took their last breath unnoticed and without any companion. Japan's National Police Agency said that the number of people expected to die alone will rise to 68,000 every year if the current trend continues. A total of 21,716 people in Japan died alone at home for the first 3 months of 2024. Of this number, 80% were aged 65 or older and includes suicides. As Japan grapples with the reality of an aging population, growing concerns for people who live and grow old alone are also gaining attention from the government. In Japan, a solitary death is defined as the death of a person who has not been cared for by anyone and the body was found after a certain period has passed. Japan currently holds the title for having the largest elderly population in the world, with 28.2% of its population, or around 36.23 million people aged 65 years old or older. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, I'm Natsumi Kojima, your global citizen correspondent for God in our beloved country, the Philippines.
The death toll from Indonesia's tragic lava floods has increased from 44 to 67 in the past 3 days. Trisha Molina reports.
Indonesia was a scene of devastation in the aftermath of flash floods and cold lava flow that hit residential areas near one of the country's most active volcanoes this past weekend. Indonesia's disaster agency chief said the death toll rose to 67 on Wednesday from 44 on Monday. The number of missing is now at 22, while dozens of people remain unaccounted for. Many of the dead were found near riverbanks, buried under volcanic material or rocks after being swept away by the deluge of volcanic material, mud, and rain. Hours of heavy rain on Saturday resulted in severe flooding that carried torrents of ash and rocks from Mount Merapi, the most active volcano in West Sumatra, Indonesia. The volcanic material known as cold lava or lahar included ash, sand, and pebbles, which were carried down from the volcano slopes to the villages. Transportation across 6 districts was severely affected, while authorities deployed heavy equipment to clear debris from the areas worst hit by flooding and cold lava flows. The natural disaster forced thousands to flee their homes as the search for the missing continues. Indonesia sits in the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a tectonic belt of volcanoes and earthquakes that surrounds most of the Pacific Ocean, hence making the country prone to constant risk of volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods, and tsunamis. Reporting, this has been Trisha Molina, SM9 News.
The Prime Minister of Sweden said the Nordic country is open to allowing nuclear weapons in its territory in the event of war. His statement comes as Sweden became the newest and 32nd member state of NATO a few months ago. Trisha Molina will tell us more.
Sweden is rapidly shedding its decades-long image of being a neutral country since it became a part of NATO on March 7, 2024. In a recent interview, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson indicated his openness to authorize the deployment of nuclear weapons in the Nordic country in case a war erupts, noting it is completely a different matter when it comes to a war situation. According to Kristersson, democratic countries must be ready to defend their respective territories from other nations that could be threatened with nuclear weapons. The Prime Minister made a statement as Sweden prepares to vote on a proposed government bill in June that seeks military cooperation with the United States. If enacted into law, the agreement will give American soldiers the right to use Sweden's military bases across the country as well as store military equipment and weapons. Reporting, this has been Trisha Molina, SM9 News.
Flooding in Rio Grande do Sul causes the Uruguay River to overflow, displacing thousands and triggering evacuation alerts and rescue efforts in Uruguay and Argentina. Natalia Prado brings the report.
Flooding in Rio Grande do Sul has affected Uruguay and Argentina as well, with border cities experiencing severe flooding. In Uruguay, 9 states bordering Brazil and Argentina have been swamped, and at least 12 municipalities near the Brazilian border are on evacuation alert. According to the latest update from Uruguay's national emergency system, approximately 2,845 people have had to evacuate their homes. Beside the affected cities of Cerro Largo and Rocha, the city of Paysandú has suffered the most damage along the border with Argentina. In Argentina, around 579 people had to leave their homes. City officials reported that the armed forces, firefighters, and several organizations are working together to rescue affected residents and relocate them to resettlement centers. Reporting, this has been Natalia Prado, your global citizen correspondent for SM9 News.
An Iranian film director escaped to Europe a week after receiving his jail sentence. Melchizedek Cadis reports.
Mohammad Rasulov, one of the well-known directors from Iran, was sentenced to 8 years in prison and lashings last week. His sentence was announced ahead of his planned trip to the Cannes Film Festival, where his movie The Seed of Sacred Fig is due to premiere at the international event this week. In 2022, an Iranian court sentenced the award-winning director to 1 year in prison on the charge of propaganda against the government and was also banned from making films for 2 years. His films have been banned in Iran despite winning international accolades. Rasulov refused to disclose his location and said he chose self-exile rather than facing his prison sentence. Reporting from Kuwait, I am Melchizedek Cadis, your global citizen correspondent for God and for our beloved country, the Philippines.
And before we end, may be inspired with the words of the sun. In everything you want to do, if you are committed, if you are consistent, you will succeed. And that's all for this edition. For more news updates, you may visit smninewschannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I am Franco Baranda, and this is Newsline World.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Subscribe to SMNI News Channel and turn on the notification bell to keep you up to date. Also visit our official social media accounts and join our community on Viber and Telegram.